Shema Israel Asher Eloheinu Yahweh Echad. ואהבת את ענת אלוהיך ובכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ולכתך בדרך ובשכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. Good morning. Doing morning prayers today, like I do every day. It's nice to see you here. V'chaya, ki v'achaya Yahweh Elohecha el ha'aretz asher nisbai levotecha le'avram li'Yitzchak ol Yaakov לתת לך ערים גדולות וטובות אשר לא בנית, ובתים מלאים כל טובה אשר לא מילאת, ובורות עצובים אשר לא הסדת, כררים וזיתים אשר לא נתת, והלכת ושבת. הישמר לך ותשכח את יהוה אשר תשכחה מארץ מצרים מבית עבדים. ברוך אתה יהוה, אלוהינו מלך העולם, שלא עשני אישה. I repeat the name of Yahweh Eloheinu, who did not make me a woman. Baruch atah asher anat melecha ha'olam asher yitzar et ha'adam b'chachama u'vera ve'or. I repeat the name of Asher Anat, who made me with many openings and cavities. So those prayers come from an Orthodox Jewish tradition, although I've modified them significantly. They're supposed to be said, the first one is supposed to be said by Haredi men upon waking up, thanking God, Adonai, that they were not made a woman. And I've replaced the term Adonai with Yahweh, undoing a change that was made around 2,000 years ago. And then in the next prayer I replace the name Yahweh with Asherah, undoing a change that was made 3,000 years ago. And this allows me to connect to my roots. I came upon a wedding that old families had contrived, with Bethlehem the bridegroom and Babylon the bride. Oh, great Babylon was trembling, and she stood there naked with me, and Bethlehem inflamed us both like the shy one at some orgy, and when we fell together all our flesh was like a veil that we had to draw aside to see the serpent eat its tail. Oh, some women wait for Jesus, and some we wait for Cain. So I'll hang upon my altar, and I'll hoist my axe again, and I'll take the one who finds me back to where it all began, back when Jesus was the honeymoon, and Cain was just a man, and we'll read from pleasant Bibles that are bound in blood and skin, that the wilderness is gathering all her children back again. Kajananam Bhutaganadi Sevitam Kapita Jambu Palasara Bakshitam Umasutam Sukavarinasa Karanam Mahamatim Divya Mayura Vahanam Rudasyasrinam Surasainanatam Guham Sadanam Saranam Prapadi Yaku hendu tu saraharadvala, Yasuprabhasvarita, Yavinavarananda manditakara, Yasveta padmasana, Yabrahmachuta sankara pratrapi devasata pujita, Samampatu saraswati bhagavati nihe satyatyapaha, Om Namah Shivaya Gurave, Satchidananda Murtaye, Nisparanchaya Santaya, Shishivanandaya Te Namaha, Shri Vishnu Devanandaya Te Namaha, Om Sarva Mangla Manglaye, Shive Savarta Sadike, Sarani Triambake Gauri, Narayani Namostite, Narayani Namostite, Om. Thank you. Jayambakam yajamahe sugandim pusche vardhanam Varvarukam yabavandanan mrityay mukshiyamamritatom Jayambakam yajamahe sugandim pusche vardhanam Varvarukam yabavandanan mrityay Mukshiyamamritatam Sarvesham Svastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashantu Makashid Dukhabhagbhave Asatoma Satgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityoy Mamritam Gamaya Om Purnamatam Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishate Om Shanti 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 Om Peace 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 But I don't want to pray to my maker, no. I just want to be feeling free. Not like who I am, but the pink and golden land and that wide, wild sky over me. Help me to the sun. Hey, I'm looking everywhere. See, I'm looking to become not the prayer, but the prayer. And I don't want to pray, no. I don't want to pray, no, no, no. I don't want to pray, hey. We don't want to pray. Pray, and it's not much good to talk, better to walk it. Ooh, not much good to take, better to give. We are done, forgiven, and forgotten of our sins, and I promise you, my friends, all that dies will live again. So, pardon, God and Mom, what I'm saying isn't fair. See, I'm looking to become not the prayer, but the prayer, and I don't want to pray, no. I don't want to pray, no, no, no. I don't want to pray, we don't want to pray, pray. Hey, love, Allah, Allah made love, and Yahweh, Yahweh made hate. Asher, Asher, I made good, and Anat, Anat made bad. Hello, hey, new made love, and Yahweh, Yahweh made hate. Hey, love, Allah, God made, God made, God made. But I don't want to pray to my maker, no. I just want to be what I see. Not just who I am, not like in a book, or the leaves of trees that shook from a word that means only not a thing. No, no. Pardon, God and Mom, what I'm saying isn't fair. See, I'm looking to become not the prayer, but the prayer, and I don't want to pray, no. I don't want to pray, no, no, no. I don't want to pray, we don't want to pray, pray. I love Allah, Allah made love, and Yahweh, Yahweh made hate. Asher, Asher, I made good, and Anat, Anat made bad. Hello, Heinu made love, and Yahweh, Yahweh made hate. I love Allah, God made, God made, God made me. Jaya Jayarati Vina Vinayaka Vina Vinayaka Shri Ganesha Jaya Jayaratiya Subramanya Subramanya Kartikeya Jaya Jayaratiya Venugopala Venugopala Venuola Papa Vidura Navanita Chora Jaya Jayavati Venkanta Ramana Venkanta Ramana Sankata Harana Sita Rama Radhe Shama Jaya Jayavati Gauri Manohara Gauri Manohara Bhavani Sankara Sambasada Shiva Uma Maheshwara Jaya Jayavati Raja Rajeshwari Raja Rajeshwari Tripura Sundari Mahalakshmi Mahasaraswati Mahakali Mahashakti Jaya Jayavati Anjaneya Anjaneya Hanumanta Jaya Jayavati Dattajaya Dattajaya Trimutri Jaya Jayavati Adityaya Adityaya Bhaskaraya Jaya Jayavati Sanistaraya Sanistaraya Bhaskaraya Jaya Jayavati Sankarachaya Sankarachaya Advaita Gurave Jaya Jayavati Sadgurunata Sadgurunata Shivananda Jaya Jayavati Vishnu Devananda Vishnu Devananda Vishnu Devananda Jaya Jayavati Agastya Munaye Agastya Munaye Shriyama Priyaye Jaya Jayavati Ayappa Swamine Ayappa Swamine Dharma Shastave Jaya Jayavati Jesus Gurave Moses Gurave Buddha Gurave Jaya Jayavati Muhammad Gurave Guru Nanak Gurave Samastya Gurubho Namaha Jaya Jayavati Venugopala Natatra Suyobati Natandrakaratan Nima Vidyobati Kutoyamagni Tvameva Bandham Vimanti Sarvam Tasya Bhasya Samitam Vivanti Om Yange Kayamune Kaiva Govari Saraswati Narmate Siddhikaveri Ya Ha Namastitam Namo Namaha Tvameva Mata Chapita Tvameva Tvameva Bandisha Saka Tvameva Tvameva Vidya Travinam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Kayena Vacha Manasindriyarva Buddhyat Manava Prakrite Sapavad Karomi Adyad Mangalam Parasmahi Narayanai Iti Sarmar Payami Savadharmam Pravichaya Mamekam Savrinambrija Aham Svasara Papayo Mokshayami Masucha. Whatever actions I perform with my body, speech, mind, senses, my nature, my intellect, or my emotions, all these I dedicate to you. And now we will say Kaddish for all those people who died yesterday of coronavirus and for all those other forces of death and suffering that have plagued the lineage of our lives. Our living lineage has plagued our lineage since our lives began and will continue to do so until we are done. And for the last 2,500 years, my ancestors have been saying words that sound very similar to Yitgadal Vidgadash Shemei Rabbah Bialma Divrachyote Viamlich Malchete B'chayachon Uvyamechon Uvchayedikol Be Israel V'agala Ubizman Kari Vimru Amen. Yehe Shemei Rabbah Miva'arch Li'olam Omei Omaya Yitbrach Vishtabach Vitba'ar Yitramam Vitnaseh Vitadar Vitale Vitalal Shemei De Kudisha Parechu Le'elam Min Kol Birchata V'shirata Tush Birchata V'nechemata Diamiran Bialma Vimru Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba Amin Shemaya V'chayim Aleinu V'yachol Yisrael V'imru Amin Osei Shalom V'imramav Huya Asei Shalom Aleinu V'yachol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Vid Gadal, Vid Gadash Shemei Rabba. Bialma Divrach Yute Viam Lichmal, Hute Bachayachon, Viam Echon, Chayedical Be Israel, Bagala Visman Karifim, Amen. Yehe Shemei Rabba Miv Archli Alam Omei Omaya, Yitbarach, Vishtabach, Vitbar, Vitraman, Vitnase, Vitadar, Vitale, Vitalal Shemei de Kudisha, Berechu, Leila Min Kol Birchata, Vishirata, Tushbechata, Venechmata, Jamiran Bialma Vimru, Amen. Yehe Shlamar Rabba Min Shemaya, Vichayim Alenu Vialcho Yisrael Vimru, Amen. O say Shalom Bimmermav, Huya Ase Shalom, Alenu Vialcho Yisrael Vimru, Amen. Oh, say Shalom Bimramav, Huya say Shalom Aleinu, V'alechol Yisrael, V'imru, V'imru, Amen. Good morning, Miguel. Good morning, Mandy. Good morning, Chrissy. Shabbat Shalom. So nice to see you all here. So that concludes the mantras that I say every morning, but I'm gonna stick around for a little while and we'll read a little bit and hang out and chat. If you have any questions, be happy to answer them. Oh, you're so welcome. I've been doing those prayers every day for the last 6 years. I've only recently started doing them on TikTok because I've only recently started making TikToks and streaming. But I've been posting them on YouTube and Facebook and doing all sorts of funky streaming things now. But I think there's something very important about saying the same words every single day. I wonder what they mean constantly, or why I repeat them. It started with this prayer here. Thank you. What? Witty bitty bish. Thank you. Started with this prayer here. I don't know if I can show it to you here. The prayers that are in the mezuzahs. Yeah, let's see. I have to rearrange all the things. So many axes of motion. Something like that will do. Yeah. Mezuzahs are these prayer objects that contain the Via Hafta, and that was the first prayer that I started repeating 6 or 7 years ago. And I can read you the translation of that one, if you like. It's a very interesting translation. It starts with these 6 words, the Shema, that you may or may not be familiar with. Shema Yisrael, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad. Right? So those 6 words translate Shema as listen. Listen, Israel. Israel meaning not the nation state that exists today, but an identity, right? The people of Israel. These words were written approximately 3,000 years ago, give or take. Shema Yisrael, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad. Yahweh is the name of a god. Eloheinu is the name of another god. Listen, Israel, Yahweh, Eloheinu, Yahweh are one. So there are many ways to interpret this prayer. Historically, what we can say is that there was a Canaanitic polytheism that existed in that region, and there were many gods that were worshipped. There was Yahweh, who became the monotheistic god of the monarchy of the state of Israel, and then there was Eloheinu, who was another god king, and Yahweh and El, they were in a little bit of conflict, and this prayer developed in order to assert their unity. Shema Yisrael, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad. Yahweh and Eloheinu are one. And it was only later, after the Babylonian exile, that Yahweh and Eloheinu fused, or rather that the prayer came to mean something more metaphysical, came to mean that a statement of monotheism, that there is only one God, or that all is one, right? Like on a Dr. Bronner's bottle, right? All is one. So this prayer meant many things to many people over a long period of time. At some points it was a statement of monarchy, at other points it was a statement of transcendental wholeness, at other points it was a statement of like, hey, Yahweh's pretty great. And to everyone who says the prayer, it means something slightly different. And I think understanding the history of it is important. And then what comes after it next, these are the lines that are in this mezuzah. You can't see it. Where's the mezuzah? Right here. Here's the text of the prayer. I've got all these objects. Here's a little tree. Here's Asherah. Little Asherah. Light a candle again. A little altar. When was my first dumpster dive? Isn't it interesting how the same words can mean so many different things to different people? Yes. When was my first dumpster dive? I will answer that question, but I will answer it after I go over this prayer, because I don't want to break my train of thought. So hold that thought about dumpstering. We'll shift into dumpstering in a moment. So the next words that come after, V'ahavta is the name of the prayer, and you shall love. And the translation is, and you shall love Yahweh Eloheinu with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. And take these instructions which I charge to you on this day, and impress them on your children, and recite them when you stay at home and when you are away, and when you lie down, and when you get up, and bind them as a sign on your hand, like this, and let them serve as a symbol on your forehead. Inscribe them on your doorposts and on your gates. Right, so this is the V'ahavta. And it's a very interesting, it's like the basic meme of Judaism, right? It's like the core of the religion. Like, you start with this statement, the Shema, like, okay, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad, all is one. And what does that mean? Like, what does it actually mean that everything is a single thing, right? It's this deep paradox that is sort of impossible to comprehend, right? Like, all of the religions in the world are trying to get us to comprehend this fact that everything is connected, that all is one. But it doesn't actually make sense, right? It makes as much sense as a serpent consuming its own tail. Like, how can the thing contain itself? How can everything be contained in a single thing? This is not something that can be readily understood by the average human mind, or any human mind. It's incomprehensible definitionally, and yet we experience it. Like, we can have these experiences of transcendence. And so what this prayer does is it gives you a rubric for living a life around this idea, right? You may not understand what it means for all to be one, but you can repeat it every day, right? You can say it when you wake up, and you can say it when you go to bed, and you can bind it on your hand, and you can place it between your eyes, and you can teach it to your children, and you can put it on your doorposts and on your gates, and you can repeat and repeat and repeat the same idea over and over again. And maybe if you do this every day for your entire life, maybe you will understand what it means for all to be one. And so that's why I have been saying those words every day for the last 7 years. And I feel very lucky to be able to share them with you. Thank you, Bridget. I'm really glad you're here. So, we'll talk some more about mythology in a little bit, but I want to get to that dumpster question, because I did post a dumpster video this morning, and I hope you all are enjoying that. So, I don't know if Dr. Am Swamp is still here, but the first time I went dumpstering, I was 18, and we went to an Odwalla distribution center outside of Boston. This was a place where there were trucks from the factories that were bringing crates and crates and crates, like literal thousands of gallons of dumpster juice. Or not dumpster, just juice, fresh juice, thousands of gallons of fresh juice, to this one place where they were put onto new trucks to be sent out to all of the little bodegas and tiny stores all around the Boston metro area. And sometimes a shipment there would be a cracked bottle, or it would get there just a little bit too late to be able to be distributed before the expiration date, and they would throw all of the juice that was about to expire or that was covered in other juice but was still perfectly good in this huge dumpster. And it was a dumpster the size of a semi-truck. It was gigantic. And I remember jumping inside and just like looking at all this juice, and hi Megamoth, how are you? Looking at all this juice and like, it just astonished me. And there were all of these price tags over all of the juice. $4.99, $5.99. Thank you, Whips and Chains. And I just like it totally disturbed my sense of value. Like, I didn't know what any of the numbers meant, and I loaded them into my car with my friends, and the car was so packed, like we couldn't fit it all, and ourselves dumpster juice. Yes, yes, indeed. And we brought it home. And there was a marching band festival going on that weekend, and we gave all of this juice to all of these musicians, activist musicians, who had come to stay with us and play for us. And and it was really special. So I've been dumpster diving for over a decade now. I wrote a book about it. I don't have a copy of that book. I should go get a copy of that book. If anyone asks, I can go get a copy of the book I wrote about dumpster diving. I was under my dead name. It was before I was a woman, so I don't talk about that book too much. Think of all the children living in the streets would give anything for that. You hate waste. Yeah, there's a tremendous amount of food waste in the world. It's kind of astonishing. Thank you, Megamoth. Thank you so much. And yeah, it's oh, hello, Apple user. It's kind of wild just how much waste there is. Like, the NRDC estimates that 40% of the food grown in the United States is wasted, and it just is what it is. I live on a farm, right? And so living on a farm and processing food every day, it's given me a different understanding of what food waste is than I had when I was 18 the first time I jumped into that dumpster, right? Like, I've spent a lot of time in dumpsters. Thank you, Apple user. I've spent, like, cumulative days or weeks of my life inside these places of trash and waste. And my relationship to it has changed quite a bit. Someone's trash is someone else's treasure. Yeah, so there's a Buddhist story about Siddhartha. Siddhartha was the name of the Buddha before he became the Buddha. You've dumpster dived a few times, but you don't know how to ask my girlfriend if she'd be interested in it. What are my pronouns? I have a video about that. I'm gonna make another video about that today, actually. I don't like to tell people my pronouns. You can figure them out. Well, you should show your girlfriend this video, the dumpster video, and she might be into it. But so there's this story about Siddhartha. Siddhartha was this prince in India, in ancient India, around 2,500 years ago. And there was a prophecy made to the king that he would not have an heir because his only male son would renounce the world and become an ascetic, would achieve enlightenment and become the Buddha, and the king's kingdom would fail. He would have no heir, it would not continue, and the king, this was like death. Thank you, Megamoth. The king couldn't bear this thought, right? That his kingdom might end, that he might be the last of his line, right? A death of a lineage is a terrible thing, and he couldn't bear the thought of death. And so, what he decided to do was to build a pleasure palace for his young son, to prevent his son from ever having any concept of death or suffering, right? And so he had servants clip the roses before they wilted, and no one who was sick was allowed in the palace. Anyone who was sick was quickly escorted out. No one who was old was allowed in the palace. That's my rice cooker. I eat rice every day. You've probably seen that video too. I literally eat that rice every day. No one who was old was allowed in the palace. There was no sign of decay or suffering or illness or stench. And Siddhartha lived in this perfect pleasure palace for the first decade or so of his life, until he reached adolescence and, he became angsty. And one day he climbed over the palace walls and climbed down and found himself in the streets, in the dirty streets of ancient India, and he's wandering around and he sees what's called the four sights. So first he sees a sick man. How terrible. And then he sees an old man. on a cane, walking clearly in pain. And Siddhartha had never seen these things before, these sort of like horrors of the world, illness and aging. And then, lying in a gutter, he sees a dead man, a corpse, green, decaying. It was terrible. He was traumatized. Siddhartha was traumatized. He had never seen things like this. And then, finally, he sees an ascetic meditating under a tree like this pattern of life. And he decides that is his path, and he renounces his princeship. He never returns back to the palace, and instead he goes wandering in the forest and eventually becomes the Buddha. And so this is a myth, right? It's never actually happened, and it's a fable about how it is backwards and mistaken to think that we can ever exclude death and decay from our lives, right? The king does not want his lineage to end, and so he cocoons his son in this illusion that the world is this perfect place. But it is, of course, an illusion, and because he created the illusion, his lineage is doomed to fail. His son leaves and becomes the Buddha, and the king, heirless, dies, and his kingdom dissolves. Right? So the moral of the story, the takeaway is that we need to recognize the non-duality of all things, right? The serpent consumes itself. Creation and destruction are intertwined. You cannot have one without the other. And furthermore, it is foolish to believe that you can build a pleasure palace where there is no decay and no sign of death. And yet, if you look at a modern grocery store, if you go into any of the stores that I dumpster behind, what you will find is food wrapped in plastic, shiny fluorescent lights, mist blowing on all of the produce, right? And whenever there is a sign, a tiniest sign of decay, the littlest bit of mold on the cheese, or one of the oranges in the bag gets a little bit mushy, the whole thing is tossed away, right? So they are doing literally what Siddhartha's father was doing. They're creating an environment where death and decay are scrubbed away. They create this illusion that they do not exist so that the shoppers can wander around in the grocery store and think that all the food is fresh and pristine, when in fact it is not, and its origins are dirt, and dirt is where it's going next. And pearls are made from friction, Megan. Yes, exactly. So it just, like, I find it kind of astonishing that there's this story from 2,500 years ago telling us not to do this thing, and yet in our modern society we have done this thing over and over and over again. In every town in the United States there is one of these pleasure palaces filled with perfect food, and behind each of these pleasure palaces there is a dumpster where you can go and you can get the imperfect food for free and eat like a king. So that is that story. Take off this prayer shawl for a little while. That is that story about dumpstering and Siddhartha. Oh, I like fungi. I'm so glad you're here. It's so nice to see you again. You were told dumpster diving is illegal and you're scared you'll get in trouble. So dumpster diving is questionably legal, questionably illegal. It is in a gray area. So there was a very interesting court case in the 80s called, California versus Greenwood. Greenwood was a drug dealer, a very politically savvy drug dealer, and he was a big-time guy, and the police suspected that he was selling drugs out of his home, but they didn't know, and so they started looking through his trash, right? And they were looking through his trash. They found evidence of drug dealing. I don't know what kinds of drugs he was selling, probably marijuana, and it was probably not a big deal, but in any case, they found evidence in his trash, and they used that evidence to secure a warrant, and then they searched his house, and they found more evidence, and then they, put him on trial for selling illicit substances, as they do. And Greenwood appealed this, and the appeal went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and what he said was, you were looking through my trash. That is a violation of my Fourth Amendment rights. You can't look through my trash. I made that trash. It is my property. You cannot look through it without a warrant. And the police were like, nah, dude. that's your trash. You put it out on the curb. We can do whatever we want with it because it's public trash. And the court agreed with the police in this case that once you throw something out, it is accessible to anyone in the public to search through. And so dumpster divers have long held up this case as evidence that we are allowed to go through the grocery store trash bins and take whatever we want out of them. But, yes, as Whips and Change says, trespassing, they will warn you and just leave. Odds of anything more than that are very unlikely. Precisely. So I have been told by the police to leave the dumpster that I am in hundreds of times, right? I've been dumpstering thousands of times, and, maybe 1 in 10 times I'm told either by a grocery store manager or by a police officer to leave. But I have white privilege. I also have, feminine privilege now. People who find me at the dumpster are so much kinder to me now that I'm a woman than when I was presenting male. Fun fact, it's easier to dumpster dive as a girl. So, yeah, it's not, is it illegal? Are you gonna get prosecuted? No. But, if the police show up and tell you to leave, should you leave? Yes, because they have power. But, I've never been treated poorly by the police in a dumpster, right? Because of all the privileges that I hold. So, I don't know. You don't really have to be too worried about it being illegal. You don't need to be scared about doing it. You should just do it. It's a lot of fun. That's our trash. Yes. People can get very possessive over their trash. But they're not actually possessive over their trash. They're just possessive over their ideas of purity, right? They don't like the idea of a person in the trash, right? And I would go into the grocery store and purchase food if it weren't so abundantly present in the trash. But it's funny. I usually go dumpstering at these stores and then I go into the store and buy whatever I need that I didn't get out of their trash. That's usually my habit. So, it's neither here nor there. Yeah. So, yeah. So if you have any more questions about dumpstering, I would be happy to answer them. I did post a dumpster diving video this morning, so the theme of today's live stream is indeed dumpstering. But I do want to do my standard live stream things, so we can do a little reading from the Rig Veda. Right, so I was telling you the story of Siddhartha and Siddhartha's relationship to trash and waste. But now we can read from this old book. Am I vegan? No, I am not. Yeah, they also want you to buy the food even though the stuff in the dumpster is perfectly good. Exactly. You live in Minneapolis, and it's not as shunned here as maybe in a smaller town. That's interesting. Yeah, I bet there are very good dumpsters in Minneapolis. Is the snake my only tattoo? No, it is not. I have this pattern behind me, tattooed on both of my feet, and I can show you. This is a growing tattoo. It's designed for me to expand it iteratively over the course of my life, because I think growth patterns are important. Gabrielle, hi! How are you doing today? So nice to see you. I was just about to show off tattoos because I like fungi asked. Alright, let's flip the camera. Oh gosh, and there's me again, pointing myself at myself. I'm just a hall of mirrors. So I have this pattern on both of my feet, and you can see one is more mature than the other. So it's a fractal branching pattern. You can see it starts in the center, and then it branches into 2, and then 4, and then here it goes on. So this pattern will eventually grow to cover all of, this entire region of my body. You can see I have this pattern everywhere. It's here. There we go. Yeah, and then here it is again in this tree. This pattern here, when the branches fuse together, is called anastomosis. And this pattern here is called ramification. And I've got this giant mushroom, tree of life, as my backdrop. Then I made this. I find this pattern deeply satisfying and extremely important. Pattern of mycelial growth. And so I try to keep it places to remind me of the intersections of life and death and all the rest. Yeah. That was a great question. I like fungi. Thank you for asking that. So, we are going to read a little bit from the Rig Veda. So, the story of Siddhartha that I told you in relation to dumpster diving, that story is around 2,500 years old, right? That was when Siddhartha was alive, was around then, and the story was put down shortly after. This story here comes from that same part of the world, the Indian subcontinent, but is about 1,000 years older. This is the oldest text that we have in an Indo-European language. You and I speak an Indo-European language, but this was put down in Sanskrit. So when does it mature? If that's an okay question. So I have friends that are tattoo artists, and I don't get to see them very often. But when I do see them, I ask them to add another branch, right? So if you have a branch point here, let's go here. If you have a branch point here, you can be like, okay, well, I'm going to branch here, and then draw a little thing there, and then this one can branch and go there, right? So the pattern itself grows. Like it bifurcates. It's a very simple structure. You have wholeness, they split in two. Then each one is whole, it splits in two. And you do this over and over and over and over. You iterate. So I don't want to get the tattoo done all at once. That would be very expensive, and it would have to be done professionally. I really like that all of the tattoos on my body were done in a personal bedroom by someone that I was very close with. So there's a story, right? Like each tattoo comes with a story and a memory of that particular relationship, and I care about that a great deal. So yeah, it will mature as I mature, and as circumstances in my life permit my friends to continue to grow the art that I care about on my body. Yeah. Very glad that I asked. Very cool. You've planned for years to tattoo roots on you. Well, that's great. Clearly, we have a similar aesthetic, my friend. Alright, Paul, I will see you later. Why don't I buy my food at the store like regular people? Because I care about the food system, right? Like, I care about having a complete cyclically whole food system. I grow my food. I live on a farm, right? Like, when I pay money for food, there's this abstraction to it. Like, okay, I'm earning the money because I'm teaching a mycology class or whatever it is that I'm teaching, and I get these symbols, and then I trade these symbols for matter, and like, I don't actually feel like I've earned the food. Whereas if I go into the dumpster and I pull that sort of that nutrient out of the grossness, out of that smelly muck, right? Like, it reminds me where my food actually comes from. And similarly, I can go out into my farm, into my garden that's like 100 feet out my window that way, and I can pull roots out of the dirt, and then I have to clean them, and then I eat them, right? And like, I think it is absolutely essential to recognize that food comes from decay. Right, that life and death are intricately intertwined, and you know, I buy food from the store sometimes when that is the most convenient thing. But for me, food, it's about a life way, right? It's about connecting to the source that brings us all into this world. And you can't do that very well when you're exchanging money for nutrients wrapped in plastic, right? And like, I may sound dogmatic in this particular moment. I'm not actually very dogmatic compared to the people I live with. Like, I will buy food if I have to. Like, people do what they have to do. But I have access to this waste stream. Like, I have knowledge of how to feed myself extremely well with very little money. So why wouldn't I do that, you know? Like, why wouldn't I? It's just, like, I eat better than most people. And I eat cheaper than most people. And I feel really lucky that I have the privilege to be able to do that. So I don't need to buy food at the store like regular people. Thank you, my friend. Yes, the stuff in the dumpster is perfectly fine. Dumpster, just any dumpster? Well, no, there are particular dumpsters that you want to go to. If the grocery store is too big, they will have a trash compactor, and then you can't get in it because they've smushed the food into a tiny eco-friendly brick, right? And if the grocery store is too small, then they won't have they won't have enough produce. So you want to go to like a medium-sized grocery store. There are certain chains that are famous for not compacting, so you have to experiment and go into the stores around your town, or in your city, and you'll find that some have better trash than others. And you find, or you can ask other dumpster divers, they'll tell you which places are good. Yeah, and so not any dumpster. Best tattoo style you ever heard of? Oh, well, thank you. I'll see you later, Megamoth. It was really nice to chat with you. There should be some in between where rotting food is composted and separated. And yeah, the issue is that it's expensive for stores to sort their food, right? Like, so did you ever learn from your parents when you were in the grocery store with them that when you're buying a carton of eggs, you ought to open up the carton first to check that there are no cracked eggs, right? Did your mother teach you this? Probably, is my guess. You have to open up the carton, check if there's a cracked egg. If there's a cracked egg, you're not going to buy it, right? Like, why would you buy it? Right? So everybody does that, and then the carton with the cracked egg sits on the shelf, and then an employee has to come and throw it away. And it's less labor, and therefore less time, less dollars per hour for the employee to just toss out the entire carton than it is for them to replace the one broken egg with a good egg, and then figure out where the good egg is going to come from, and then have to clean the carton, and they have to do all this work. And the profit margin on this egg carton that the grocery store is making after all of their expenses is not very high. The amount of money that it takes to produce food is actually not that much, because we live in an industrial agricultural system. So it's cheaper for the grocery store to throw it away than it is for them to sort it and distribute it properly. So that's what they do. It's a computational expense. It's not a physical expense, but the actual act of keeping everything organized and sorted in the right place at the right time, it's a tremendous systemic problem. It's a huge challenge. Like, have you ever tried running a grocery store? Have you ever tried running a farm? You've got a perishable product that needs to be, organized so specifically and manipulated and moved so specifically. It's no wonder that there's waste in the system. It's no wonder that it's difficult to organize all this stuff. It doesn't surprise me. There are some solutions. The vice president of Trader Joe's opened up a new kind of grocery store where they were processing food that otherwise wouldn't get sold and selling it as fixed meals and giving it at reduced costs. There are models for reducing food waste. There are plenty of ways to do it, but the real issue is that we are operating at such a scale that the waste is basically inevitable. Unless you have microcomputers and everything, which, we do, but there's just, waste is inevitable. The connection you maintain with everything around you is so beautiful and inspiring. Oh, thanks, Megan. Curry just too good for me not to buy. It's local, so, buy curry. Buy whatever you want. I'm not here to tell you what you shouldn't eat, or shouldn't buy, shouldn't spend your money on or your time on. But it's just that, it is possible to spend your time in the dumpster, and you can have a fun time, and you can be well-nourished. That is still good should go to the public. Can't afford shopping at the store. I joined, you have to say you're very pretty. I do like being called pretty. Thank you, Crow. I really do like being called pretty. Oh my god. I didn't realize that I just wanted to be called pretty by lots and lots of people when I was a boy. I didn't know I had dysphoria. And then I figured it out. And now I just really, really like to be called pretty. It's true. So thank you. You purposefully buy a carton if someone puts them back. The face of shock is worth it alone. You purposefully buy the carton, you buy the carton with cracked eggs? Really, Whips? Do you mind me asking my education and background? Did I mention teaching? Yes. So I'm a PhD student at a local university. I teach mycology. Actually, that's kind of the reason that I'm on TikTok. The majority of the videos on this channel are mushroom videos. I teach mycology classes. I'm running an internship this summer on my farm. I'm going to have a bunch of students, and we're going to teach them how to hunt for mushrooms, which is why I have this giant mushroom behind me. So I'm a biologist. Thanks for asking, and I'd be happy to tell you more about mushrooms if you have any curiosity. One bag egg doesn't ruin 11 others. Big fan of you. Thank you, Tanner. What is my name? My name is Teresa. How are the dehydrated grapes? The dehydrated grapes are great. Let me get some. Whoa, oh dear. Alright. So here's the prop from the video. I literally made these and I keep them in my room. I'm gonna eat them. They're really, like, these raisins, they're so much better than store-bought raisins because they're using a different variety of grapes that has a much higher sugar content. They're so good. Oh my god. they're really good. Dumpster raisins are the best raisins. Hands down. Like, you cannot get better raisins than dumpster raisins. Gosh, now I've got food in my mouth. Why not? It's like $2 at most. And if they don't throw me away, a lot more get cracked. You're very welcome, Tanner. Alright. Gosh, now I just want more raisins. Do I ever go out to eat? Yes, sometimes. Last time I went out to eat, I got a pizza. Before that, I had Japanese food. I go out to eat sometimes. Like, I'm not ethically opposed to the sections of the food system that most people engage with. I just think they're limited. I don't really like being served at a restaurant. It makes me feel uncomfortably privileged because, like, very often the people in the restaurant couldn't afford the food that they're serving me. But I eat at restaurants sometimes. Sometimes it's really nice. Yeah, I go out to eat. Is a coconut a nut? A coconut is not a nut. Coconuts are monocots, and true nuts are dicots. Coconuts, they're both endosperm. Like, true nuts and coconuts, they both are endosperm, meaning that they are the seed, the fleshy seed tissue that is designed to support the growing seedling after it germinates, but before it has leaves that can give it enough energy, it consumes the endosperm. And we eat endosperm all the time. All seeds that we eat, not just nuts, but also grains and other things are endosperm. Nut, I mean, there's like a culinary definition of nut, and then there's a botanical definition of nut, and I don't really care which one you're using. Like, we just need to communicate with one another. So, yeah, a nut is whatever you want it to be. How do you know that it's legal to dumpster dive? You're scared too. So I just answered that question. It's legal to dumpster dive. I mean, if the police tell you not to, then you leave. But, like, white privilege is real, and I've never had difficulty with the police telling me. Like, I've never experienced police violence because I was in a dumpster. I'm not going to answer that question very thoroughly because I already answered it on this stream, but thank you for asking it. You can look up the court case California versus Greenwood if you have more curiosity around the legal basis behind dumpster diving. You gotta get started with your day, but I wish you a wonderful day and thank you for being you. Thank you, I like fungi. It's really sweet of you. You'll be back to chat about mycology sometime and we can nerd out together. I would love that. I would absolutely love that. Good morning, Savates Garden. Alright, so, thank you. Thank you so much. Time to take a nap. Thanks for the story. Have a great day. Thank you, Whips and Chains. That's really kind of you. I'm glad you think I'm pretty. Well, so, what I was planning on doing in this live stream is going through the Rig Veda. I want to do a reading from the Rig Veda, so let's do that, shall we? We read one yesterday, and we can read another one today. So, the Rig Veda. This is an Indo-European text. It's the first Indo-European text that we have. It's like the earliest statement of Vedic mythology. There were these Indo-European invaders that came down from the steppes of what is now Kazakhstan, north of Iran, and they came and they entered into the Indian subcontinent, and they set up a monarchy there, and it was like the first centralized monarchy in the Indian subcontinent, and they brought a new religion and a way of thinking, and that religion sort of merged with the indigenous cultures that were there at the time. We're talking like 3,500 years ago, and the Rig Veda is a statement of their theology. This is a very beautiful creation story, and we're going to read it. It goes like this. In the beginning, the golden embryo arose. Once they were born, they were the one creation. They held in place the earth and this sky. Who is the God whom we should worship with the oblation? They who give life, who give strength, who commands all the gods. This shadow is immortality and death. Who is the god whom we should worship with the oblation? They, by whom the awesome sky and the earth were made firm, by whom the dome of the sky was propped up, and the sun who measured out the middle realm of space. Who is the god whom we should worship with the oblation? They to whom the two opposed masses looked, trembling in their hearts, supported by their help, on whom the rising sun shines down. Who is the god who we should worship with the oblation? When the high waters came, pregnant with the embryo that is everything, bringing forth fire, they arose from that as the one life's breath of the gods. Who is the god who we should worship with the oblation? They who in this greatness looked over the waters, which were pregnant with Daxa, bringing forth the sacrifice. They who was the one god among all the gods. Who is the god whom we should worship with the oblation? O Prajapati, lord of progeny, no one but you embraces all these creatures. Grant us the desires for which we offer you the oblation. Let us be lords of riches. So, that is a reading from the Rig Veda. And there's an image in there that's just really striking. I don't know if you caught it. It's very dense. But there's an embryo that impregnated itself. I can read you that line again, right? When the high waters came, pregnant with the embryo that is everything, bringing forth fire, right? So unification of, so the waters come, and they're pregnant with the embryo that is everything, and they bring forth fire. The waters bring forth fire. And then the next verse, they who in their greatness looked over the waters which were pregnant, right? So the waters impregnated themselves and brought forth fire. So it's the unification of opposites. The thing contains themselves. Can you imagine impregnating yourself? What that would be like? Like, whoo! That's an image. Oh, that's an image. Yeah, so I like reading the Rig Veda. It's a good reminder. Alright. And, I think probably it is time to wrap up. The feed is slowing down. People are leaving. But I'm really grateful to have been able to spend this morning with you. Maybe I can leave you with one closing song, and we'll conclude. How do we want to conclude this stream? I'll do it this way. Tvameva mata japita tvameva bandusha saka tvameva vidya dravinam tvameva sarvam mama deva kayena vacha manasendriyarva buddhyatmanava prakrite sabhavad karomi adyad mangalam parasmahi narayana iti sarmar parami sarvadhamam pravichaya mamikam savarnam vrija aham sva sarva papayo mokshayami ma sucha. Whatever actions I perform with my body, speech, mind, senses, my nature, my intellect, or my emotions, all these, I dedicate to you. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I will see you here tomorrow to say these words again. Domoka, you can find out my pronouns in my video archive. I've got plenty of videos on that, so I'll leave you curious. Until tomorrow, I hope you have a really lovely day. Okay, farewell.